There are very few things that seem as ridiculous as a 300-pound linebacker practicing his pliés. But why is it so ridiculous? Some would say that football players and ballerinas simply move in vastly dissimilar ways. And yes, this is very true, but what is even more dissimilar is the way in which they approach movement. You see, there's a certain paradigm that we associate with football players and ballerinas. Paradigm in this context referring to a certain way of viewing the world, a certain model of thinking and acting, certain patterns, cognitive and behavioral patterns that we would associate with someone who practices ballet or plays American football. Now, we can characterize these patterns. We can characterize the football pattern or the American football pattern as aggressive, brave, explosive. We can also characterize the balletic pattern as graceful, fluid, precise. What is so dissimilar between American football players and ballerinas is not their movement, it's their paradigm. And that's why this image seems so ridiculous to us. Okay, so if we agree that this seems quite ridiculous, then why would an American football player ever practice ballet? Why is there this recent trend of American football teams, including the Columbia team, mandating their players to take ballet class? Well, if we look at ballet as a paradigm, a way of approaching movement, then we can see that within the paradigmatic container of ballet, there are certain movement principles that translate quite directly to American football. For example, the balletic notion of fluidity of movement, or the idea of bracing or holding your body. So from this slightly silly example, we can see the merit, we can see the value of pulling principles from a different paradigm, from wearing a paradigm slightly different from our own. We grow on a personal level, and we become slightly better versions of ourselves. Better athletes, better football players. Now, if we can agree that different sports have different paradigms, then surely we can agree that different geographies have different paradigms. If I told you I was from New York or LA, you'd see me quite differently. You'd expect different things from me. You'd expect me to speak differently, to act differently, to think differently. And this makes sense on an intuitive level. And so if we just said that we can characterize a balletic and football paradigm, then we can also characterize a New York and LA paradigm. Now, no one paradigm is objectively better than another, but we can see that different paradigms have different strengths and different weaknesses. And we can also see that if we incorporate different paradigms in the way that we view the world, we become more holistic in our perspectives and our approaches. Naturally, I also wear a geographic pattern, a geographic paradigm. This one. As an expat kid growing up in Hong Kong, I was definitely connected to a certain way of viewing the world, the Hong Kong way. Now you may ask, what is that exactly? Many would describe the Hong Kong paradigm as academic, theoretical, and a little removed from practicality. You see, as kids, we were jocks in the context of a library, but we lacked a lot of real-world soft skills that many kids our age already developed. Now, this isn't to say that Hong Kong isn't a fantastic place to grow up, but in the context of this short talk, it's important that we stay cognizant of where the Hong Kong paradigm is lacking. So, in the spring of 2014, 5 years after I left Hong Kong, I returned with two friends, Chris and Sam. What we tried to do in this time was give a handful of Hong Kong kids an opportunity to step radically away from their paradigm, to do something they've never done before and grow through the process. How? We were going to climb a mountain. This one. Specifically, we wanted to be the youngest group of kids ever to summit Parangala Pass, which stands at 18,300 feet in the Indian Himalayas. However, there is a misconception here that this was about ambition or excellence or exploration. It wasn't. It was about growth. Now you may ask, what could climbing a mountain possibly do for a group of 16-year-old kids? Well, just like a football player venturing into a paradigm quite different from his own to become a better athlete, we took these Hong Kong kids and we looked for a paradigm as different as we could find from their starting point. And what is more different than studying in a library and climbing an unapologetic, snowy, rocky Himalayan mountain? You see, the mechanism at play here was quite simple. We simply put a new reality in front of these kids, a harsh reality, a reality that couldn't be approached with the hands-off Hong Kong paradigm. And so all that they could do was try on a different one. For many, this was the first time where teamwork became a necessity for survival. It wasn't an extracurricular. It was a thing that determined if they could get to tomorrow. The idea of a woven, interdependent team was given instrumental weight. And the phrase, "no man left behind," well, it manifested in its truest form. In a world where almost all social interaction is digitalized in some way, there was a space for unstructured, unfocused, tableside conversation to flourish. You see, nobody cares what your predicted IB score is, what your target university is, or how many followers you have on Instagram when you're on the side of a mountain. What does matter is your ability to empathize, to be present, to be genuine. Not behind a screen, but right here. And perhaps most importantly, the expedition was an opportunity for these kids to see how the skills that they already had within their own paradigms, like grit, like perseverance, like the ability to work under pressure, all in the context of a library, translated to different environments. Into an environment where there was 3 feet of snow and another 2 hours to go. And that's what the Ladakh expedition was all about. Just like a football player practicing pliés. It was about taking a group of kids that we identified with deeply and putting them in an environment, in a reality where they couldn't use their own paradigm. And they had to wear a different one. And in the process, grow profoundly. Imagine just for a second that this box metaphorizes a problem or an opportunity in your life. And that each shape, each star, circle, rectangle, represents a different paradigm, a different way of approaching the world, a different perspective. Approaching the world with one paradigm, with one perspective, well, that's like picking one shape and trying to thread it through all the different molds. No matter what life throws our way, we have the same way of dealing with it. And so if we follow this metaphor, what we tried to do with the Ladakh expedition was put the kids in an environment where their blue circle didn't fit the rectangular mold. And all they could do was put it down and try a different piece, try a different paradigm. And so we can see by picking up this second piece, by incorporating various paradigms in the way that we view the world, we approach the world, whether it's our job, our school, our friends, our family, we become more holistic problem solvers. We become better able to tackle the problems and capitalize on the opportunities that life presents us with, from angles previously inaccessible. Like a football player practicing ballet or a Hong Kong kid climbing a mountain. More paradigms means more growth and more impact. Imagine a world in which you weren't restricted or anchored by any one paradigm, where you didn't have any preconceived notion of how you're supposed to think or who you are supposed to be. It's a world in which empathy and flexibility are the norm, and a world in which we maximize both our personal growth and our personal impact. And that, I believe, is an idea worth spreading. Thank you very much.